leaving Egypt when the Most High brought the death in Egypt. All right? Because you got to remember, while we was in Egypt, we were being oppressed in hard bondage. And you remember, too, the Egyptians didn't like us. Okay? They didn't like us. Because we were in their country, in their land. All right? And at one point, we were very successful under Joseph. All right? And when the new Pharaoh came back into Egypt, he said, there's a new Pharaoh, and knew not Joseph. What he was actually saying, he knew Joseph, but he didn't regard Joseph. I don't give a damn about Joseph now. I'm the new Pharaoh in Egypt. Things is going to change now. So when things change, he said, you know what? The best thing to do is to enslave the people. And that's what they did. All right? So continue. So we were not able to bake our bread with yeast. So the bread was flat because we had to leave out of Egypt in haste. The Most High was bringing that death. Continue.
And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they brought forth out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt, and could not tarry. Neither had they prepared for themselves any victual. Now the sojourning of the children of Israel, who dwelt in Egypt, was 430 years.
See? But now, when you read that, you will figure that we were enslaved in Egypt for 430 years. But in this translation, the wording was not, the full wording was not put into the effect of that. The wording should have been the sojourn of the children of Israel and their fathers in the land of Canaan and Egypt is 430 years. Because the time period, the count started from Abraham in the land of Canaan to the Exodus. All right? So when Abraham went into the land of Canaan, that's when the Most High made a covenant with Abraham. From that time period to the Exodus was 430 years. Because we did not spend 430 years in Egypt as slaves. Okay? When you check out the history, that 18th dynasty of Egypt only lasted for 255 years. So if that 18th dynasty lasted for 255 years, there's no way you could have served 430 years in Egypt. Okay? It's impossible. Remember, that 18th dynasty was a dynasty that we served in Egypt. No other dynasty. The 18th dynasty of Egypt. And it began with Ammuz. Okay? Ammuz was the pharaoh that took down the Hyksos that was ruling Egypt. Joseph got in good with the Hyksos. When Joseph went down to Egypt, the Hyksos was ruling Egypt. Okay? And the Hyksos were called foreign rulers of Egypt that took over Egypt. Right? And when the Hyksos was ruling, that's when Jacob was in power under the Hyksos rulers. Okay? So when Ammuz came in, he kicked out the Hyksos. And that was the end of the Hyksos reign. And that's when the true native Egyptians came back in Egypt and started to oppress us and enslave us. All right? So the period of us being in Egypt altogether was 215 years. 215 years. When Jacob went down to Egypt, that began the count. And when Jacob went down to Egypt, the slavery did not begin. The slavery began when Moses was born. And it ended when Moses brought us out of Egypt. So when Moses was born, that's when the slavery began. And it ended when he took us out when he was the age of 80. 80 years old. That's how long the slavery lasted in Egypt. Not 400 years, not 430 years. The slavery started when Moses was born, and it ended when Moses took us out with the Exodus. But we spent 215 years in Egypt, beginning with Jacob. And after that 215 years, 80 years of it was slavery. Okay? We live in Goshen. We were living good in Goshen. When Joseph ruled, Joseph was prosperous in Goshen. And Goshen was the best part of Egypt. That was located in the lower part of Egypt, in the Nile Delta Valley area. Okay? Egypt was set up. Egypt is a large country. Okay? Egypt is almost bigger than the state of Texas. All right? So you had Lower Egypt, which is up north, Middle Egypt, and Upper Egypt, which is down south. So the Pharaoh that came in, that took over the Hyksos, came from Upper Egypt. It was known as the Thebes dynasty under Ammuz. Then his son, Amenhotep the first. That's the pharaoh that knew not Joseph. Amenhotep the first. Okay? So that's when the time period began. When Jacob went down to Egypt, that began the 215 years to the Exodus. All right? 215 years with Abraham to Jacob. And when Jacob went down to Egypt to the Exodus, it's 215 years combined together give you 430 years. All right? Not solely 430 years in Egypt. It's impossible. Impossible. The 18th dynasty lasted for 255 years. And if you have a dynasty that lasts for 255 years, there's no way you could have been enslaved for 430 years. All right? Continue reading on.
Verse 41. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years.
At the end of the 430 years, beginning with Abraham, when the Most High made the covenant with Abraham in the land of Canaan. Go ahead.
Even the self-same day it came
Even
to
that
pass.
self-same day, meaning when the Most High made that covenant with Abraham in the springtime in the land of Canaan, it's the same self-same day that we came out of Egypt in the springtime. All right? When we came out of Egypt was in the springtime in the month called Abib, which means the spring forth. That's the springtime. Every Passover is kept in the spring. All right? Every high holy day comes with what? A season. Okay? The Passover comes in the spring. The first fruit comes when? And it's always on a full moon. The first fruit comes in the summertime. The Feast of Tabernacles comes when? In the fall season. So every high holy day falls in a particular season. That's what the Most High said, in the self-same day. From the day that he made that covenant with Abraham, it's the same day that we came out of Egypt in the springtime. All right? How you know it's springtime? When the barley season comes in. All right? The barley season determines the springtime.